Hi folks, Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Hey, I want to come out here with a blog post. You heard me talk in one of my previous blogs recently about, some of the dangers out there of these people that, well, they're not dangers of people, but the dangers of the elements of thought that are very restrictive of saying, there's only 10 ways to use social media, and there's only 10 ways to build relationships, and there's only 5 ways of this, and 7 ways of that, and 13 ways of that, and all that sort of stuff that's out there that's very, it looks good on paper, little graphs, all that sort of good stuff. I've spent 2 decades running companies. I haven't worked for other people for most of my life. My whole experience is being able to deliver on the dollar, and there's no paycheck that comes at the end of the month unless I deliver it, and the same for my employees. So my experience is different than a lot of people who may have worked in a corporate thing where whether they played free cell all week, they probably will still get a check, where if I play free cell all week, I probably won't get a check. So there's a little bit more pressure when you're an entrepreneur pushing things to that next level. But the thing I want to talk about is, in my early days, I used to study a lot of Harvard Business Review. I used to study a lot of business theory, Tom Peters, Peter Drucker, Harvey Mackay, I mean, you name it, I studied it. Warren Buffett, Forbes, Fortune, Wall Street Journal, Barron's, all that kind of crap when it was popular. But a lot of the stuff that I remember always reading in Harvard Business Review was they'd have all these great business models, and they'd have these beautiful business graphs, and they'd be like, okay, well, here's how United Airlines went from this to that, and their changes, and here's what made. The problem with a lot of the data they had was it was post data. It was data after, they had made changes, and then here's what happened after they made those changes. Unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. If life did work that way, you could go to Vegas and go, well, according to the graph that was published in Gambler's Magazine of what the winnings are on average, I should be able to achieve the same results and get this out of the machine. Plus, owning your own business, doing your own business, there's so many hundreds of different variants. It's a constant tweaking of this, that, the other, and trying to get this to work, and that to work, and this to work. And sometimes you find the right combination, and everything suddenly works and turns on. There's no top 10 graph. There's no top 10 things of how to build relationships on social media. There's no top 10 things of, you don't sit there, unless you're completely brain dead, I suppose, and go, okay, so I'm meeting with a business client. Can you excuse me for a second, sir? I have to make sure that I'm meeting the top 10 relationship things in my social. Do you feel engaged, sir? You do? You don't know what engaged means? Neither do I, but it says we have to be engaged, so I hope that we have engaged. I'll sit and have business relationships and ask my friends when I'm done with our conversations, do we feel like we engaged? Okay? And you know what, honestly, one of the reasons I don't like these forms of thought that are restrictive in saying, okay, well, there has to be a certain way that you do things, is because they don't take into the element of life, the variances of life, the unexpected things of life, the things that might be thrown at you, and the fact there's certain combinations of what you need to do. Some people are different than other people. You need to appeal them in a different way. You might need to engage with them in a different way. But I would hope that your experience with people weren't that you get done with them, that you have to sit there and go, I hope I engaged that person. Did we make a connection? Did we build a relationship? Well, I hope that you did, because if you really have to think that hard about it, I don't know what you're doing with your life, because there's a certain common sense rule when it comes to building relationships with people and how to interact with them and everything else. I don't know, maybe there are people on the planet that really need that lowest element of help to get from the short bus to the big bus. I don't know. But relative, I hope in your life you've learned relationships and how to build them and how to interact with people, etc., etc. But I just get tired of that whole form of thought, and I think it's important that people recognize some of the stuff they see in social media, some of the media they see in social media that tries to define this stuff, that there's certain ways that you need to do stuff. Yeah, they're great suggestions. The problem I have is when these people start running around and start banging on other people and going, you're not doing it this way. And recognize that those graphs are that way. If you're starting a business, it's important you recognize some of those graphs or post graphs. if you're setting business fields and things of that nature. A lot of times businesses try something, they fail massively. A lot of times businesses try something and it succeeds massively. Some things work, some things don't. Some things you just have to try them and see how they come out. But I think it's important that people recognize that, and that you can't go into business and just expect it to be about the graphs. If it was that easy and every business would start according to the graphs and XYZ of whatever policies you put in, like United Airlines has or something silly like that, then everyone would probably have a successful business, and they usually don't. So, on one hand, feel free to listen to the pundits of social media and how to use relationships and the pundits of business out there, but also be wary that the book isn't always written. I mean, I've been through a lot of different business stuff, and there is no way in heck going through most of it that I could have always referred back to a top 10 list and said, have I done this today? Did I do this with a client? Okay. Most times in business, you're thinking on your feet and you're moving at an incredible pace, and there's a lot of input, there's a lot of output, and you've got to do the best you can with it. So, by that, don't expect everything to operate to the graph. I suppose that's one of the important lessons you can get. I've met a lot of people that are unsuccessful in their business and it's failing or goes bankrupt, and they're like, well, but my understanding was if we did this and we did this, everything would be fine. It won't be. So you've got to stay on your toes, and you've got to operate a lot of times outside the bounds of very simple formats. And that's it. Thanks for coming by the ChrisVossShow.com. Bye-bye.